ridiculous. Well, here's the thing.
Maybe. Sometimes.
Tell me about this. I want to know more.
Oh, yeah. No.
Holy cow.
We've had a lot of fun.
So I started the hockey season. My son.
Oh my gosh.
First day of tryouts were last night. So
Isn't this early? Is
no,
it usually?
not-
No?
I mean, yeah, I mean it's early because it's October, but this is when they do it.
I mean, is there ice at this? Well, I guess it's indoors, but still.
Indoors.
Yeah, indoors. There's always ice.
Ooh.
Yeah, when did hockey season begin in Canada, Nicole? June? Or does it never stop, I guess is the
Never
question.
stop.
It really ends.
Yeah.
No, there is a very definitive time period for the games, but people are practicing all year round and playing all year round in various ways. So
Mhm.
yeah, it's kind of an ongoing thing. And if they're not playing hockey on the ice, then they're playing road hockey.
Yeah.
So that used to be the big
Oh,
summer activity for my son and his friends. They'd set up the net in front of our house on the road.
My. That sounds
Mhm.
dangerous in so many different ways.
And well, we didn't live like beside a freeway or anything, so it was a pretty quiet street.
I guess. Wow.
And then the neighborhood knew that the kids were playing hockey, so
And everybody would
so-
come.
yeah, cars would slow down.
Mhm.
Well, it's also the time that has rolled around now for another Parenting Roundabout podcast.
Yes. So, hello and welcome to Parenting Roundabout, a weekly podcast about the things that parents are talking about, obsessing about, and complaining about right now. I'm Catherine Haleko, hockey mom, and with me today are Terri Morrow.
I'm lamenting the start of community band season, not because I don't enjoy being in community band, but because I enjoy having Tuesday nights free. So now every Tuesday night it's like, do I have too much work and I can't go? Are we having dinner too late and I can't go? I really should go. I enjoy it once I go, but getting myself out of the house, not always so easy.
Different
Right.
story.
Well, Terry's here. Nicole is here.
I'm still eating turkey from celebrating Canadian Thanksgiving on Sunday.
Oh, happy
that's
Canadian
right.
Thanksgiving.
Thank you. As you all know, and the listeners, I love Canada.
Yes. I believe we established that earlier this week.
Mhm.
So
That's right.
the Thanksgiving weekend, it was actually Monday, but most people celebrate Sunday,
Mm-hmm.
was this past weekend. And so we had our own little version.
Wow.
Even
Nice.
though there wasn't a turkey to be found anywhere in town.
I guess I didn't
Man.
realize that Canadian Thanksgiving involved turkey and all the things that American Thanksgiving. Do you have like stuffing and cranberry sauce and sweet potatoes, marshmallows, all that
No.
good stuff?
Well, we have the turkey, we have the stuffing, the cranberry sauce, the mashed potatoes. Then we usually have Brussels sprouts and carrots. We don't have any of this green bean fried onion thing or sweet potato thing or but we've happily incorporated that into our Thanksgiving because it's a fun way to eat your vegetables.
There you go. Mushroom soup, baby.
So we've kind of we celebrated twice, and the first celebration was this past weekend, but it's the exact same idea.
Huh.
And same concept, everything.
Get together
So.
with the relatives.
Yeah,
Family
big
tension.
long weekend.
Nice.
But it's not it's always on a Monday, so you get a long weekend.
Actually, this is relevant because today on the podcast, we're going to talk about raising non-entitled kids, but we're also
Yes.
going to share our thoughts about family meals.
Uh-huh.
So that could include Thanksgiving. We're going to shout out some stuff we like on the Roundabout Roundup, and we're going to hear an interview with Nicole and Terri about the new sitcom Speechless. So we kind of already heard what was
Yes, let's just jump right, since we were talking about days to be thankful. Let's just jump into this little pile of marshmallow fluff that we have chosen to talk about today. We noticed a Washington Post article making the rounds recently on social media, as these things do. Anytime there's something about how you are parenting wrong, that thing hits social media like wildfire. This particular one is called How to Raise Kinder, Less Entitled Kids According to Science. Because science, ladies and gentlemen, science has a name, a study, and a book on every single thing you do. I learned many names for things that I would just call normal human behavior in this article. And the first thing I thought was, boy, oh boy, first world problems, anyone? Sally, we must learn to be compassionate. Not everyone can have a huge 2-story house with a soaring foyer. Some people have to make do with a lovely ranch-style home. Little uncomfortable. And the second thing I thought was, according to research done by a noted scientist, there is an affliction called behavioral research exhaustion syndrome, with which I have diagnosed myself, and now I am going to go lay down. So, as we all know, I have an attitude about this stuff. It just gets my back up every time. But I know you all are more temperate and interested in the insights that professionals can give you into how you should be living your life. So, Catherine, what did you think about this?
Well, there were parts of it that made me say, like, oh yeah, that is happening all the time in my house. So,
well, because scientists say so. I mean, there's research.
Right.
There's hard research that says
there is,
this is happening in your house. Gosh, there's a lot of research money out there.
But I think that's probably why it grabbed some people's attention, because you read about, I agree, first world problems for sure. But it is something that, I mean, that's kind of the definition of entitled, right?
Yes, I guess this whole article is entitled.
When you have a first world problem, that's entitled. So yeah, it fell into the category of like all parenting articles. Like, yes, this would be nice if I could affect these changes in my home, but I'm not necessarily seeing that happen.
Yeah. How about you, Nicole? Did you gain useful knowledge from this?
I mean, I think there's, raising a teenage daughter right now, and having a son in college who still comes to the bank of mom and dad.
Yeah.
It's a constant kind of concern that we have, because of course when we were their age, we paid for most of our things and didn't rely on our parents as much and didn't have the high expectations, and so we try and offset it in other ways. It's a dilemma. It really is a parenting dilemma. It is.
You both feel that your kids do have this entitlement problem.
In some ways, yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, because here in the article it says that humans can become acclimated to almost anything they're exposed to frequently. So, I worry that, or obviously we've exposed them to a lot of Starbucks drive-throughs and, a piece of clothing here and there, or a car ride to the movie theater. So they get used to it, right? And then when they start to expect it, that's when we push back and we're like, wait, hold on a second.
Right.
You can't expect it all the time. And then, but they're like, but yeah, you do it all the time. So
I guess I'm the one that's wanting to be with them all the time. Maybe they're like, I should never have let mom come with me because now she expects it. I feel like perhaps my kids look at me and think that this information would be useful for them as well. Don't don't tell mom your problems, because she's going to want to hear them all the time.
All the time. But I have an issue with my daughter this summer because she's really too old for these summer camp things, and she wasn't taking summer school this summer, and she was just beside herself. She just didn't know what she was going to do for the summer. And what was I going to do to fix that?
Yeah.
What was I going to do to entertain her for the summer? Because every summer has been jam-packed with activity, and this was the first summer that we didn't really have anything planned. And I was thinking, when I was her age, I never went to summer camps, or we just hung out with our friends and rode our bikes around town. I mean, granted, there's a lot of stuff that they can't really do now anyway because of safety reasons. But we just had a lot of downtime, and that's not something she's used to.
Yeah,
So,
I don't know.
I there's a large sense of entitlement in terms of being expected to be entertained and busy and have things.
I'm just trying to think. I don't know. I mean, certainly there are individual times when I think that, I do the, electricity costs money and the cable TV costs money and all of this stuff. But I just feel like in the list of priorities in my parenting, this sort of thing is kind of low. I think just because we've got so much other stuff going on. Which doesn't mean I want my kids to be boorish and entitled. It just means that doesn't seem to be, I don't feel there's all that high a risk of it with the other things. But I mean, certainly we do, like they were talking about, yelling at people passing, cutting you off in traffic, and not thinking about the fact that they may be rushing to the hospital, which, let's be honest, they're not. They're just... they're just entitled. I feel that those people are entitled. And I'm not sure about, maybe I've just read too much disability arguments online. The idea that the way to teach your kids empathy is to, have them help the less fortunate, which is a good thing to do, but at the same time, the less fortunate aren't there. Don't exist to teach or get a lesson. So I wonder if there's a certain diciness to that too. That, the way to teach your kid empathy is to go buy undershirts for a less privileged kid. It is all very first world problem-y. Anyway, Catherine, you said the part that really resonated with you was, I think we just talked about this. Anything we provide or do regularly become the new norm, whether it's a post-game milkshake or a certain brand of clothes, and not doing things can also become a norm. I know we were talking recently about, yes, I will buy you underwear. No, I will not buy you the underwear from the fancy place that you like. Right. That I can see. But I don't feel that happens a lot in my house.
Well, it's dumb things like last week we had to go to the orthodontist, and afterwards my daughter was like, well, time to go to McDonald's for my hash brown. And I was like, what? Like, apparently every time we go to the orthodontist, we have to get a hash brown after. Like, it's such a weird
I like hash
thing.
Browns.
I like them too, but I don't know why this became a thing. So now all of a sudden and then she's like, okay, we have to go. It's a weird thing, but it's just an example of the way that things really do become habits. Like, I always leave my dirty dishes in the sink instead of putting them in the dishwasher, or mom always packs my lunch, or dad always packs my lunch instead of me doing it. So though that piece of this article made a lot of sense to me, but they didn't get into how to fix it. They didn't say, take your kids to buy Christmas presents for the less fortunate, and then you'll solve this particular problem. So
it's like, you're doing it wrong. Go
I'm
fix it.
still waiting for that response.
It's interesting hearing all this stuff because, we've talked about routine before, and my family is very fixed on routine. And So I build a lot of that sort of thing in, and I want them to expect it, and I want them to know it's reliably going to happen. And, don't feel afraid to go to the doctor, because afterwards we're going to do this fun thing. That's like a strategy that I use.
Yeah.
And,
Right.
every summer we're going to have something to structure up your summer. And that's my responsibility, to provide that thing to structure up your summer. It may just be a difference with the kind of family I have and the kind of issues we have. Not to say that kids with disabilities can't be entitled also. Oh my, yes. But that sort of the things that we do to just kind of deal with our daily life has a lot of that stuff built into it of necessity. So I don't think of it as necessarily a fault of theirs. I think of it as, this is what we do to move ourselves along. You need to give incentives to do things that are difficult. And I want them to learn that they're going to get that thing every time, because that's why they do what I need them to do. But it certainly could be a problem and get out of hand. And you do hope that they outgrow it at some point. But heck, I buy myself hash browns to get, if I get through something difficult.
Yeah. I know.
I would want that metaphorical hash browns.
I definitely always go to Starbucks after my mammogram. So.
Yes. So obviously this doesn't apply to us, right? This is just the children. We don't have to model it, do we?
I
think it's no big deal to go get a hash brown, but it's
I know.
the expectation that bugs me.
Yeah, I just got distracted by that because it made me want hash browns.
I feel like and I don't know why I don't just say no.
Yeah.
I think it's because I feel like there's no good reason to actually say no.
Yeah. One of the other strategies discussed in the piece is reminding kids how other people might be feeling, to teach empathy, which, can you teach her how it makes you feel when she asks hash browns? It makes me feel that you expect me to provide things for you. Just be a little emphasis. How do the children who can't afford hash browns feel? Let's sit and think about the ones who have to get the French fries instead.
The ones that have to.
I have a bad attitude today.
They have to walk to the orthodontist because no one's around to take them.
What about the ones who just have to have crooked teeth?
Right, even more so. Yeah. I know.
But yeah, how you teach kids, I definitely have issues with that, and that's a very difficult thing for a lot of kids with developmental issues and learning issues, to understand that other people have feelings that differ from theirs. And why do people do what they do? Oh my gosh, having to explain on a daily basis why people do what they do is a challenge. Nicole, as a teacher, do you have resources for teaching empathy to students? Is that something that you did?
That actually was a very large part of our curriculum, because, as you know, we have inclusive schools in our school system. So that is, having empathy for one another is the foundation for the school culture, because kids need to understand, the differences, and I guess be more aware of various abilities. And so we have actual there was a whole curriculum around social and emotional development, which focused on empathy. And they say that empathy is the precursor. It's it's kind of the element that kids need in order to reduce bullying. And I'm a big believer in teaching empathy, and I'm a big believer in that those skills actually do need to be directly taught. You can't just assume that kids will inherently know that or have that modeled at home. So need to be specifically talked about and discussed. And so that's my little rant.
Yeah, the modeling at home part. The modeling at home is where I get stuck on a lot of this stuff. Don't do as I do, children.
Yes.
I think it's great that it's included in the curriculum.
Yeah, it's That's the one thing that I really wish we had more of here, because there's just seems to be not a lot of attention paid to the social development in our area schools, at least. So,
or I wonder if it's taught in some ways that is difficult to generalize. You do a little exercise at school and it makes sense, but how does that apply to when you want something?
Right.
Yeah.
So, and that's hard. It's hard for adults. So, of course, it's hard for kids. And how important do you think it is for your kids to understand the way you feel about things? Is it, as parents, are we supposed to just
grin and bear it?
Exactly. Or is it reasonable to want your kid to understand when you're stressed and when you're upset and when you don't feel like cooking or you don't feel like doing this thing? I sometimes get them feeling sorry for me, and then I feel bad because it's really not their responsibility. It's my responsibility, the way I feel. But
yeah, I feel the same way, that I'm not real good at hiding my frustration if I feel it, but is that fair? You know, because then I'm just kind of shifting it from me to them.
And then you get you get adults who learn to tiptoe around their mothers when they were kids, Nicole and me, and then, and that's not good. I wish I could go back and redo that pressure, and you don't want to inflict that on the next generation, and yet patterns are difficult to change.
Right.
So
I don't hold my emotions very well.
And you expect your kids to empathize with your situation and stop doing what they're doing?
Yeah.
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
Well, and I don't necessarily want them to change their behavior out of guilt.
Yeah.
You know, like I made them feel bad, so now they're going to change what they're doing. So that's a very fine line.
Yeah.
You know, changing your behavior because it's the right thing to do, not because it's what's driving your mother crazy.
Right. But I mean, a lot of entitlement is kind of, your dad and I work hard for this, and then you take it for granted.
Mm-hmm.
That's sort of an empathy thing,
I
guess. That comes up a fair amount around my house. It's the clean your plate because that food was expensive or whatever. Mm-hmm. But a lot of this stuff is kind of fraught, isn't it?
Yes.
More so.
See, that's why these articles get shared on Facebook.
It is, but it's like, I don't think that it's something that science can quantify. And so it makes me laugh when I see every little thing broken down to have a particular name.
Right. I find that we're talking about it, so we're very aware and interested and curious about it. It really boggles my mind at how many people seemingly don't pay attention to this stuff, and or just things in general. So that's why I feel like a lot of this has to be talked about and discussed and brought up, because so many people seem to not be aware of it to begin with.
Yes. So. They have social media ignoring syndrome and do not get the benefit of all this guilt that we are trying to lay down. Come on, people, pay attention.
Just common sense.
Well, speaking of an area in our lives in which entitlement and guilt often play a large part, Nicole, maybe it's time for our Friday speed round.
For our special Friday speed round, we're missing Amanda from our table, but we wanted to find out where we all sit when it comes to family dinners. Do you share them daily, once in a while, or never? So, Catherine, how do family dinners work in your house? What's your general routine, or what do you strive for, and what rarely happens?
Yeah, this is where the guilt thing, as Terri mentioned, totally comes into play, because they don't happen as often as I would like. And so I feel guilty about not providing them. But then at the same time, on the occasions where we are actually all at home at dinner time and I have cooked something and then no one wants to come and sit and eat it.
Yeah.
Ooh, get your
So
entitled butts to the
ballistic.
table, children.
I get so mad. And then, but then it's like, do I want to sit at the same? You know what I mean? Like, then the mood is pretty well killed at that point. So it's very frustrating. You know, I mean, it's frustrating, first of all, that there are just so few times when we actually are all at home at dinner time, just because of all the activities and sports and things. And also, I will interject that it drives me crazy when I hear like, parents need to say no to kids' activities so that they can have family dinners. Like, okay, you want to come and tell my kid that they can't do the sport that they love because it's at dinner time? Like, that's not realistic.
No.
Really makes me mad.
Yeah.
How about you, Terri? What happens in your house?
Well, fortunately, we don't have all that many activities going on other than community band, which sometimes does take me away from the dinner table. We usually almost always all eat dinner together. My husband cooks dinner, and lately his most recent job, he's been getting home very late, so we eat dinner very late, but we all eat it together unless sometimes my son is working, but almost always we sit down as a family meal, and that's really nice, and I like that. You know, sometimes we have to keep calling my husband to come in from where he's gone to check the ball game. And on nights when Dancing with the Stars is on, I occasionally take my plate in front of the TV. But it's definitely a tradition. And whoever is home, breakfast and lunch, everybody kind of gets their own. That's sometimes if we all happen to be home, we'll eat at the same time, but it's not such an organized thing. But dinner, it definitely is. And I like that, and I think that's good, and it's definitely a tradition in our house. But I can definitely understand if we had kids going to all different things, there's no way. And those things are important too. So, you know, do you find other ways to get together all as a group, Catherine?
Well, I mean, the sports activities themselves are a thing between at least one kid and one parent, you know?
That's
right.
Bonding.
I mean, really, like, it is, you're in the car together, you're talking, you know, there is some of that. And then, you know, it's more special occasions or other events, I think, where all four of us are together, or we do sometimes all sit in the same room with a device in front of us, but we're at least in the same room.
That sounds right.
Family bonding in the new era. How about you, Nicole? Do you guys all have a family dinner?
We used to when when my son lived at home. But my husband's hours are really, you know, sometimes he's traveling, sometimes he's not. So we try to, when everybody's in the house, we try to have them together. But if someone's missing, I don't feel guilty because, you know, my son's at university, my husband's at work, and so I'll eat with my daughter. But we go out for dinner a lot too, you know, like the weekend and stuff. So
that's nice.
Yeah, and we do sit down for special occasions and such. So yeah, we just have a very unpredictable routine. So we try and eat when we can. Not I don't get too stressed about it.
I need to just take your approach.
Oh.
You don't want your kids to feel they're entitled to have dinner cooked for them and put in front of them every day. You know, this you're mixing it up. You're trying to keep them from having that expectation. There you go. So you're doing it on purpose.
Well, I think that sums up our family dinner time experience. Speaking of which, I'm just trying to think, what am I going to make for dinner tonight? So remember, you can hear a new speed round every Monday through Thursday, and we hope to have Amanda back with us next week.
Yes, we missed her this past week. Miss having her voice on those.
So now we're going to bring you some of the things that we've read or seen or used recently that we want to shout out and share with you. Terri, I'm intrigued by what I see here that you're going to mention.
I am striking a little blow for people who make podcasts around tables in their living room. Catherine and I have mentioned on our round 2 that we've recently been listening to the West Wing Weekly podcast, which is a very good podcast that's done by Josh Molina and that guy whose name I have trouble pronouncing.
Rishi Haraway.
Yes, we've been hearing it. I should now know it by now. A very high-profile West Wing podcast. But of course, there were fan-done West Wing podcasts before that. And we've also been listening to a very high-profile Hamilton podcast, The Room Where It Happens, where famous people are coming on to talk about their attachment to Hamilton, as though nobody had ever done it before. But in fact, there are fan-made Hamilton podcasts. So feeling a little guilty on the West Wing end and a little annoyed on the Hamilton end, I decided, well, here I am talking about this. I should go out and find some of these fan-made podcasts and follow them and listen to them. And so I have recently added to my podcast list the Hamilcast, a Hamilton podcast, and Wingin It, the West Wing podcast, done by fans who are truly and genuinely enthusiastic about their topic and talking about it even without big sponsors and networks behind them. And I applaud that, since we are sort of that. I feel that in solidarity, we should be listening to those. So I will have links to those on our podcast. If you are a Hamilton or a West Wing fan and have room for more than one podcast on those topics in your day, I highly recommend these. I've been very much enjoying listening to them.
Thank you. I'm going to check those out. And Nicole,
Yes.
what do you have for us today?
Well, as I was online shopping earlier, not during this podcast, of course, I quite often use this site that I didn't even think of, and I should recommend. It's great for finding coupons and discounts, so I go to it quite frequently. It's called Retail Me Not. And whenever I'm out shopping in the store or online, I'll go to that site first and check to see if there's any discounts or free shipping codes or any kind of promo code to reduce the cost of the item.
Cool.
So retailmenot.com. The other one is coupon Sherpa. And SHERPA. Yeah. So recommend you check them out.
Yes.
Save yourself something.
And send your children there when they want expensive things.
Yeah,
That's right.
don't feel entitled.
We don't pay retail children.
Well, I'm going to mention an Instagram feed that my sister turned me on to. It's called Save Family Photos. And it is just a project where the person in charge of the feed has posted family photos. She accepts submissions, and you can send an old family photo and tell a little bit of the story about the people or the photo. And it's just kind of a fun little peek into other people's lives. But they've got some great stuff. So
Excellent. That sounds fun.
Yeah.
We come now to the what is normally the interview section of our podcast. And this week, Nicole and I are going to talk about Speechless, as we have talked about Speechless other times on this podcast, and will probably in the future, because it is so very close to my life and so interesting. So we're going to talk about that a little bit now. So Nicole, have you been watching Speechless?
I have. I love that show. I think it is the best thing to come along since, like, I don't know, ER.
I've really been enjoying it too. And, you know, while I expected that it was going to have a lot to say about the special needs parenting experience from the trailer, I didn't really realize how much of it was going to be about inclusion and the different ways that inclusion can be done poorly. I thought it was really interesting that they're making this school be kind of hyper cooperative, which, as you know, is a unicorn thing to me.
Yes.
But I'm curious what you think of how they've been dealing with, the school, including him, and some of the things that they've done or done poorly.
Well, I am so impressed with whoever they are getting to consult with their inclusive approach at school, because those are things, there are elements in those storylines that they're subtle, but are a true reflection of what inclusion is. And everything from, having the right aid to who is appropriate, to having friends, to being included in the friends' activities. I'm just really impressed with what they are doing and the message that they're sending. I mean, even right down to the, I think in the last episode that I watched, episode 3, because for a while I was skeptical. I was like, okay, I'm checking off this list in my head, right? Like, okay, now he has an aide that is suitable for him. Check. He's in a quote unquote mainstream school. Check. I'm running through this list in my head. And then one of the ones that impressed me the most was that the mom, so I guess he's found this group of friends and they include him in an activity. And then the mom decides that he needs a whole new set of words on his speech board, right? To be more in line with the words of his friends. So I just, these little things that maybe might not be so apparent to the public, but it's really, I think they're doing a fantastic job with it. I don't even know if you noticed, there was in the second episode, JJ was on the football field or whatnot, and he was watching the cheerleaders. They were cheering for him. Well, the aide stepped away and let him have that experience, which is, just stuff like that I'm thinking, wow, that's really powerful, that message that they're sending. So
it's nice to see that. I think they've also, though, shown some of the pitfalls of this also. The school that's really eager to be inclusive but never thought about the fact that they would need an appropriate ramp. Or that, the student comes into the classroom and, oh, you're such an inspiration and we want to nominate you for president before we even know you, just because, you're an inspiration just by drawing air. That's certainly a difficult thing. And, and
that's the reality that people face, right?
Yes.
Like there's elements that are wonderful about schools, and then there's elements that you just shake your head and what is going on?
Yeah.
So,
and
I don't know, what do you think?
In the third episode, they're also where, he gets the friends and he's included in their activities, but then there's an activity where it's not easy to include him. And I think they showed that, canceling it brings resentment, and providing some alternative that is not what people are accustomed to has problems. And I liked the way they sort of, which I think happens a lot, is to respect you as a person with a disability. We are just going to go ahead and yell at you because we respect you that much. And on the one hand, you don't want people saying, oh, well, we have to just take it, because at the same time, it's not his fault, so it's really not appropriate to yell at him either. And I really felt, I just cringed when the mother was going in trying to fix that, because I have done that so many times. And so often you don't have the full story. You don't really know what your kid wants. You don't really know how it's going to play out if you interfere. And then you wind up causing your kid more stress and problems than they would have had otherwise.
Well, I was actually surprised that they chose the gymnasium as the alternative location. I thought maybe they would have tried to modify the original location to include him. I was kind of hoping that they would go in that direction. Because it did kind of, but once again, that's an illustration or depiction of things that do happen in real life. And as inclusive as we are, moving towards, there's still these little pitfalls. But I just think by far this is the most representative of all shows that I've seen.
It's inclusive just in having a young person with a disability play a young person with a disability.
Oh, completely.
And it that role is so effective with him in it. That it would not be if it was a non-disabled actor sitting in a wheelchair. Just everything about his mannerisms, his way of speaking, it all just deepens that character so much. And I applaud that. I'm one who've been ticked off in the past by, people who use wheelchairs being played by people who don't, and people who are blind being played by people who aren't. when you actually get a person with a disability playing that part, you can really see the difference. It's not, you don't necessarily realize that it's going to be, but to have Marlee Matlin play a deaf political operative on West Wing rather than somebody just signing that was a huge difference. Right. And this I feel too. And Micah Fowler is doing a tremendous job. Such personality and
yeah. And I really like how they incorporate the fact that he does have things to say, but he's not saying it out loud. And the way he has conversations with people on the show too. Yes. I love how they're addressing that form of communication. And even though it's not what we're typically used to seeing as an audience, it's still very effective, and you still understand what's the whole storyline.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I think it's a great, in so many ways. Yeah, it's a TV show, and it's going to have its it's what do you call that, clickbait stuff. But yeah, I think overall they're doing a pretty darn good job.
Yeah, I'll make allowances as long as it's funny.
Yeah.
Did you watch the episode from last night?
That
would have been episode 4.
Oh my goodness. You know what?
You didn't do your homework for today's talk, Nicole.
My homework.
But it's interesting in terms of what you were talking about, the aide and knowing when to step back. This was an episode in which the aide just got completely over-involved, and to the point where at one point JJ's board gets lost. And JJ is so ticked. And you can tell, you do not need any sound to know. The actor's body language was tremendous. And when he gets his board back, he says, "You took away my voice. You're not allowed to do that." And that's something that I think is really a big deal for kids who are nonverbal. I know our friend Robert Rummel Hudson has been dealing with his daughter, who uses a iPad to communicate, and people are always wanting to take that away, but that's her voice. You can't do that. You can't. No. So it's good that they're investigating really a lot of issues that don't get a lot of mainstream talk.
Well, who is exposed to that? Yes. Very few people are exposed to those issues. Who pays attention to it? Very few people, unless it's in their immediate vicinity, correct?
Exactly.
So I think that's the thing. And going back to my earlier comment, is that I think that they're really subtly and of course not so subtle in the case of losing the speech board, but they're addressing some of these issues that we're not aware of, and we think, we don't even think of.
Are there some things you would like to see them address?
Classroom. Where does he get does he get educated? What kind of classroom is it, and how do they include him more so in class activities? I mean, if this is about, a lot of it is set in the school, right? Which is interesting.
Yeah. We've seen more social things at the school than educational things at the school.
Yeah. So I'd like to see more of that. More interaction with peers. I don't know. What about you? What do you want to see more of?
Yeah, I've been kind of disappointed they made this big point that he's not in special ed. So does that mean we don't get an IEP meeting? Because I would like to see Maya take that on. That would be some fun there for those of us. We would get popcorn and sit back and watch. And for the general public to understand what those meetings are like would be extremely gratifying. Would somebody like JJ have a 504?
No.
No?
Oh gosh, no. Well, he might have accommodations incorporated, but he would have an individual education plan.
Would have, even though he's not getting. My understanding was that individual education plans were only if your educational program was different. If he's able to keep up with the actual work, and they're not adjusting the educational plan, but he certainly has accommodations that would need to be addressed.
And he has health accommodations.
Yeah.
No, you're right. Yeah, okay, you're right. So it depends at what level he's functioning at.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
There's got to be something where people are sitting around, therapists and speech people and gatekeepers of all sorts are sitting in a room where she can tear them apart.
There needs to be a whole episode to A whole season.
Yeah, a 2-part episode. We could have a cliffhanger right in the middle. Will she kill them all, or will she just eviscerate them with her language? I am looking forward to that big time.
Will he get his appropriate services, or will he not?
Yeah. I thought it was interesting that they talked about training. There was one point at which they were saying he couldn't he couldn't have the aid he wanted because the man didn't have any training, and they had trained people, which is true. You know, there's people who've gone to training and are waiting on a list to get an assignment. But at the same time, training is so important. I would like to see his aide go through training because
Well, it made me wonder how he lifted him when he was in the bathroom.
Yes.
How did he learn how to do that?
Well, my daughter was a paraprofessional for a while, and she was put as an aide to a young person in a wheelchair, and given no training, no information how to do it at all.
Yeah.
And it was not good. It was not good for either one of them. So I would like to see what goes into that and have him sort of sarcastically addressing some of the things that they probably include in that training.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and I think the overall message is that you know, he is the most suitable candidate. I mean, he obviously is the one that is, you know, represents JJ's voice the best, I guess.
And a rapport is so important. You know, I've had kids with paraprofessionals, and sometimes it's great, and sometimes they just don't click, and it's a problem, and it's a year-long problem, and there's nothing really you can do about it. So it was nice to see them do that, however realistic it is or not. I still think there's a little bit of unicorn on some of this stuff. I
assure you there isn't.
I look forward to seeing where it goes from here. Thank you for talking to me, Nicole, and maybe down the line, if they address anything that's specifically inclusion related, we'll talk again.
Sounds good. I'm going to go watch episode 4 now.
Go. It's good. Okay. Bye.
Thank you.
I hope somewhere down the line to be talking with Robert Rommel Hudson about Speechless. So expect to keep hearing about this show here on this podcast.
And I might have an opportunity to talk to Robert Rommel Hudson in the near future in real life.
You can record it live.
I know I will, actually. Yes, and I can ask him.
I am so jealous. Tell them what you will be doing.
Well, and this will be my shameless self-promotion.
There you go.
Okay.
I'm tying it into
Self-promote
our next
that
segment
sucker.
where we direct you to some things that we think you should have a look at or know about. And last night I found out that a proposal for a presentation on inclusive education was accepted, and we are going to be presenting it at the South by Southwest Education Conference in March in Austin, Texas. So I'm super excited about that.
That's very exciting.
And I get to do the presentation with Rob Rommel Hudson, which is exciting, and Skylar.
That is so cool. I can't wait to hear about that.
She's going to be part of it. Yeah, and then I think Amanda might be there, and don't quote me on that. And then a few other people that I know, Terri, you know of, in the inclusion world. So super excited.
I am so jealous.
We had a voting thing, and it was a big long process.
That is really neat.
So I will keep you all updated.
Very good.
With it.
Good.
Very good.
Yeah, Terri, how about you? What have you got to share with us this week?
Nearly as profound, but I think we had a little Facebook chat, the three of us, a while ago, or with Amanda also, about all these articles, listicles of. I think we were talking about pumpkin spice, you know, how everybody is using pumpkin spice as 20 reasons to hate pumpkin spice. And I felt like there needs to be a list of 20 things to write 20 things articles about. And I have been working on that list, and I hope to have it up by the time this podcast drops. So for all those of you who have to write like 20 blog posts a day and are looking for things to hate on, I have some suggestions. It's as Catherine knows, it's the last 5 that are really hard. So I'm down to those last 5.
Yes.
In any list, you start great guns,
and it's got to be 20.
And it's got to be 20 or 25 or 30. It can't just be 17. Yeah. So maybe that's something you could write an article about. 20 reasons why we wish lists could not be 20 things long.
Right.
I could write that list. Catherine, what are you promoting this week?
I wrote about something called family adventure racing. I heard about it through a friend who's going to do it with her family. And so there's a whole like genre called adventure racing where people race in teams of 2 to 4, and it's usually bike, trekking or hiking or running like off trail and some kind of paddling. Those are like the 3 basic elements. And there's a whole orienteering piece to it, because you're not given like go out on this course and do it. You're like find these checkpoints, and you get points for going to the different check-in places, and you have to get there all these different ways. And there are some groups that are putting together family versions of these. So I wrote about that for VeryWell, because I thought
that sounds
pretty
really
cool.
intimidating.
So I think that's everybody, right? That's it for this week's episode of Parenting Roundabout. We hope you enjoyed it and that you'll join us every week. You can listen to podcast episodes on parentingroundabout.com or download it from iTunes. Please subscribe so you get all of our podcasts and mini podcasts. You can also follow us on Twitter. I am at About Family Fit. Terri is at Momitude. Nicole is at Nicole Eridix, and Amanda is at Amanda Morin. You can also follow the podcast on Twitter. That's Roundabout Chat. And look for us on Facebook, Pinterest, Tumblr, YouTube, and Instagram too. But best of all, stop by our blog at parentingroundabout.com and read recaps, find links on all the stories we mentioned, and talk back in the comments. Thanks to John Morin for providing our in and out music, and I wish everyone a great week.